According to Bruce Timm, there are no female villains in Batman's rogue gallery, but what he really meant was that they're anti-heroes. We're going to talk about this today because this is actually kind of an interesting query that you guys in the comments came up with. And I've been looking at the comments, and you guys have been talking about this quite a bit. And I'm not here to step on any toes or make fun of anybody, except for this guy. This guy gets made fun of and put in the Arkham sewer because he's a moron, as well as he commented before actually watching the video. Because had he actually watched the previous video, well, I think he would have seen that a lot of female voices and characters were lifted up, as opposed to a man being transformed into a woman. So welcome, user, to the Arkham sewer where you belong. Anyway. So let's talk about this. A lot of you guys are like, okay, so Batman, in a sense, what Bruce Timm is saying is there are no more female villains because they all become anti-heroes. And Bruce Timm was just stating an obvious fact. And I agree with you to some extent. But at the same time, I hate to tell you this because it's true, Bruce Timm changed Penguin into a woman to pander to the modern audience. In fact, he said as such in one of his interviews about the Caped Crusader. And actually, you can see a lot of pain and regret and sadness in his eyes compared to his 2019 interview talking about the Justice League Fatal 5, which was several years after his horrible fiasco with The Killing Joke in 2016. So a lot of people were thinking, well, you know, Bruce Timm is all messed up from the Killing Joke movie and the backlash he received from fans. No. I don't think you have any idea what happened to poor Bruce Timmy. So the rumor is that the woke mob came after Bruce Timm and canceled him because of art. No, I'm serious. Bruce Timm had a website where he had smexy women, and, well, that wasn't allowed because that cult is crazy. So they decided that they were going to go after Bruce Timm. A bunch of people on Reddit, tons of people on Tumblr and Twitter were just basically saying that Bruce Timm is a bad person because he draws fictional art in dubious poses. And for the most part, his art is not bad. I mean, think of it like lewd pinups from like the 1940s with Bruce Timm's art style. And the weird thing is, this is the funny thing with these weird Puritan people, is that everyone and their mom knew that Bruce Timm was kind of a pervy sage all the way back in the 90s when he was doing this kind of stuff. It's not a secret. Although, here's the thing, he never hurt any real women. He never did anything to create controversies involving, like, female employees. He was a good guy. He's just a weirdo. But you have to remember that these freaks on Twitter and other things, it doesn't matter. If there's one thing that I will tell you that's true, is if you deviate from one thing, from what these weirdos believe, they will eat you whole. They will devour you. They will make your life miserable until you beg for forgiveness. And even then, they will never forgive you. That Bruce Timm is long gone. And in its place, we have a shell of his former self. And it's just true. Look at the way the art style is for the women in the show and how places like the Mary Sue and other people praise Bruce Timm for his more inclusive art. But your argument is Bruce Timm knew exactly what he was doing and he was just trying to dare to be different. No, that's not that's not even remotely close to what happened. It's a nice dream, though. But we are going to talk about the whole anti-heroes thing because I think that's a really fun topic, as well as we're going to bring up why I didn't include the Phantasm in the previous video. But anyway, agree or disagree, let me know in the comment section below. Do you think Bruce Timm was trying to be a pander monkey, or he really had a genius idea that female villains all become anti-heroes? Let me know in the comment section below. Batman's villains always become anti-heroes. But I'm going to challenge that little theory by telling you that most of these, quote, anti-heroes are still murderers, are still thieves, are still criminals. Yes, they work with Batman every once in a while, but Poison Ivy, Catwoman, and Harley Quinn are all guilty of continuous murder, which would make them bad guys. Now, let's look at a comparison to one of Batman's well-known anti-heroes, Red Hood. Now, Red Hood, as you know, has gone through significant changes since he was resurrected during the Jim Lee years. But Jason came back from the grave, And he was there to cause all kinds of problems. He was a murderous guy. And then after a while, he started to become an anti-hero, but he was still a murderous guy. Then when the New 52 rolled around, eventually he started using like rubber bullets and started to do less lethal methods. And that was the Red Hood that most people got accustomed to, as a guy who was not like an Arkham Knight, who's just going around shooting everybody with not blanks and just like murder man. You can't make any argument that Jason Todd is not a killer in the Arkham universe, because he straight up is. But resurrected zombie Jason uses rubber bullets, as well as Gotham Knights Jaybird uses rubber bullets. So he is different, in a sense, to the female villains. And a lot of you brought up also the new Punchline character, who was created to be Joker's next girlfriend. And DC's like, no, we can't do that. We have to give her a tragic past and make her a former villain. Because, you know, we can't have Batman going around and punching women. Which, I mean, in the animated series, they found ways around that. While Batman still apprehended females and didn't necessarily deliver hammers of justice to the face, he still put those ladies in jail. It's just he would use gadgets to tie them up or find creative ways. Although, it was weird for him to use batarangs on women because, I mean, the batarangs are made of metal, and, you know, they would really hurt a lot more than a fist. I would say that actually hitting a woman in a fictional sense would knock them out a lot better than a batarang, which is much harder than, you know, a human bone, and the velocity that a batarang is thrown is not going to be good to, you know, take that to the head or the back of the head or anywhere. I mean, that's technically could kill you, because you only need so much force to actually crack the human skull, but I'm not going to give you any ideas. Don't go hurling objects at people you don't like, okay? That's not a good idea. But did you know there was actually male villains that also became quote-unquote anti-heroes and became good guys, but they were strictly known as villains? One of the key characters we're going to talk about today is going to be Edward Nygma, the Riddler. Now, the Riddler was this really nasty, puzzle-based, murderous, crazy psychopath that always needed to get Batman and prove he's smarter than Batman by out-riddling him with riddles. Sometimes riddles involving serial killing and whatever else. Death traps, you name it, Riddler did it. Now, during the run of, I believe, the late 90s, early 2000s, Riddler had a change of heart, and he became a detective. When he figured, you know what, I can't beat Batman, I may as well join him, and he became a private eye, in a sense. He worked for Gotham City, and he had contracts with the GCPD. He worked with the Question, Renee Montoya, and he also was looking into something for the Joker about who really killed the Joker's wife, going back to the whole Killing Joke comic. So Riddler, for a while, was an anti-hero. Then, when they rebooted the DC universe, because Riddler was created as a villain, what happened to the Riddler? Did he stay an anti-hero in the new universe that was created? No, he became a villain once again, and they redesigned him as a villain that would use technology very similar to the Arkham games. He became basically the Arkham Riddler, but he was still a bad guy. Same thing with most of the villains of the time, including female villains, ones that were made exclusively for the animated series, and ended up, you know, eventually joining DC Comics, where they were kind of a villain, then an anti-hero, then a villain, and it just keeps going all over the place. Whenever there is a reboot, which happens a lot in DC Comics, female villains always go back to their roots, which are bad girls. Yes, sometimes they fluctuate and they go back and forth between villain and anti-hero, because there is a stigma that says basically women can't really be bad guys because, you know, women are nice and women are not the same as men. Men are evil and wicked and, you know, all this other stuff. You know, you can't really have equal opportunities for men and women if you see one sex as more evil than the other. Personally, I think both sexes are evil, and both are capable of really bad things. But that's just me. I see equality. But when they do this stuff, you know, it's like, okay, I can kind of see where your argument is. But mine is that they always go back to their roots. And speaking of roots, let's discuss Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy is a character that is very interesting and unique, and she is not necessarily like super evil, although she hates mankind and she loves plants, but she has a soft spot sometimes for certain men in her life. even though she twists and manipulates them in order to get what she wants, especially in the Batman Animated Series episode House and Garden. She fell in love with, I guess, a parole officer or some type of professor that was visiting her, and then, well, I guess she did the next best thing. She kidnapped the guy, fell in love with his family, and then decided to create plant people and, wanted that lifestyle. But Poison Ivy deep down really did want to be normal. She wanted a normal family, to be married to a dude and have kids and just kind of settle down and not have to be condemned for all the bad stuff she did. So in that sense, yes, she was a character that was trying to find a redemption arc, but at the same time, she committed evil atrocities in order to have her redemption arc. So she was still bad. Catwoman is the same way. Catwoman will walk the line between good and evil if it serves her purpose. Like, she'll literally rob you blind, which is a criminal act, which would make her a villain, if she knew she could, 1, get away with it, and 2, if you did something to upset her. Also, she will go out of her way to murder, like, someone that messes with her family. If someone close to Catwoman is in danger, whether she's playing the role of a hero or not, she will kill you. Now, that is a villainous act. That is not a heroic act. That would still make her a villainess. So while she has, like, always a redemption arc every once in a while, Catwoman still does things that raise an eyebrow that's not really a gray area. It goes back to her character's roots. She was always a villain. Yes, she can do nice things. Yes, she can try to be on her good behavior for Batman. But at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, she will always be a villain. And the same thing with Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn has recently, for the past 30 years, she goes back and forth between being a hero and a villain, being a member of the Suicide Squad, being a member of the Bat Family, and at the end of the day, she is always brought back as a villain. The next time they do a DC, reboot, which I have no idea when, I'm just spitballing, it could be any time, she'll probably be a villain again, because her roots mean she's a villain. And I know that they're trying to do the whole pairing between Poison Ivy and Harley, but even those two being together, they still commit villainous acts together. In fact, the Harley Quinn show that's on HBO Max, they still do villainous, murderous things, even though Harley Quinn is trying to be a member of the Bat Family and, she wants to be an anti-hero. Poison Ivy, who's still in a relationship with Harley, is like the head of the Legion of Doom. She's a bad girl. She kills people. It's funny how she kills people, but she's still a murder person. And she's not an anti-hero either. She is still a villain. She's trying to do nice stuff every once in a while because maybe deep down she does want to change and, not really be subjected to the role of villain. Nobody likes being called a bad guy. So there's that. But those 3 ladies in particular, they will always be villains. Like, when you bring them back or you do a brand new movie of Harley Quinn or Poison Ivy and you introduce the characters for the first time, will they be villains or will they be heroes? Because that's what she was made to be. She was made to be a villain. While different villains can go through redemption arcs, they always go back to being bad. It's just like what happened to Two-Face. People were going back and forth with a character like a flip of a coin. Sometimes he was an anti-hero. Sometimes he was a villain. Sometimes he was a serial killer. Sometimes he was trying to, fight his dual personality. Clayface, the same thing. They tried to reimagine Clayface, I think it was a decade ago. He was a member of the Bat Family. Everything was going great. He was putting his past aside as being like a murderous bad guy, and he was a part of the Bat Family. Then he got killed by Batwoman or someone else. I forget who. I wasn't really paying attention. And then when he came back, he was a villain again. Why? Well, because that's what his roots designate. He is a villain. Just like Batman may have stories where he becomes a villain or he's seen as a villain, but in the eyes of the reader, Batman will always be a hero. So just to close the argument, people are saying in the comments that DC villains that are female are always anti-heroes. But when you go back to the character's source material, and when you go back to how the character was created, they were always created to be a villain. So everyone who will first put these people into media, and they will do movies or cartoons or video games, those characters will always be bad guys first. They could have a redemption arc in a later game or movie. So, like I said, some of your points are valid, but they are villains. But I've been a little rough with Bruce after doing all this research and realizing, because I didn't even know he got canceled. I haven't really paid attention to cancel culture after the whole Vic Mignogna thing and a couple, voice actors. I even found out recently that one of my favorite actors, James Arnold Taylor, was canceled because he's a Christian. Of course, he didn't let that get to him, but that was kind of interesting to see that even Obi-Wan Kenobi from the Clone Wars was, not safe from the clutches of this crazy cult. So the other good point that a lot of you brought up was the Phantasm. Why didn't I talk about Andrea in the previous video? Well, that's because a lot of you guys are forgetting that the Phantasm actually came later in Bruce's career as Batman, and the Caped Crusader takes place relatively a few months after he started as Batman. There really are not that many costume villains just yet, and mostly he's dealing with mob-related threats. And occasionally, like a hitman or something like we had with that one weird guy with a bullseye mask, who's a Green Arrow villain, and I forgot his name because I've never really paid attention to Green Arrow characters. Not sorry. I'm a Batman guy. But anyway, so the Phantasm, the reason why that character is so compelling and works as a female antagonist and also, a lover for Batman is she was such a pivotal character for why the animated series Batman almost gave it all up and just married her and had kids. She created such a conflict in his heart when Batman, or rather Bruce Wayne, didn't want to dedicate his entire life to, the vengeance for his family's death. He wanted it to be different. He wanted to end up being happy, and he found the girl. He found that person that could really complete him and heal his soul. It was a big deal for him. He was really ready to give it all up, and then Andrea left him at the altar, so to speak. They were going to get married, they got engaged, everything was going great. Bruce was happy for the first time in his life, and because being Batman is a canon event, well, there were things that were in play that kind of Bruce and Andrea couldn't stop. Andrea's dad was murdered by the mob, and because Andrea was much older when it happened, she didn't have the time to kind of deal with those emotions and fuel that energy for something more than becoming a villain. She literally lost everything that night. It wasn't just the death of her father, it was the death of her happiness as well as her death with being with Bruce. Because Andrea needed to do something that Bruce never could, and she gave in to the abyss. Now, Bruce always walks the tightrope of the abyss between light and dark, good and evil, and, he's really on that gray area. Andrea just chucked that all aside, and she just has all this pain and anguish and rage for what happened to her life, because it wasn't just her dad who was killed. Her life was destroyed by the mob, and she, in order to survive, had to become the Phantasm. So there was no going back for her to have a happy, wonderful life after everything that happened to her. She can't be like Batman in a sense and just kind of put on the suit and fight crime. Had she had it happen to her when she was younger with Bruce, I think both of them could have rekindled their relationship and things would improve. But, there's a lot of emotional scarring inside of Andrea's heart. And that's why it was such a shocking reveal when Batman found out that she was the Phantasm, because he knew that they could never have a life together. It's kind of like that scene in Batman Returns where Catwoman has just about to kill Maxwell Schreck, and she says, I would love to, live in a castle with you, Bruce, and, be with you for the rest of my life and be happy, but I just can't live with myself knowing that this slimeball, Maxwell Schreck, is alive. So she kills him. She chooses to murder Maxwell Schreck over being happy with Bruce Wayne, Michael Keaton. And Andrea did the same thing. She could have run back to Bruce after her father was killed, but she went and dedicated her life the same as Bruce, but instead of vengeance, it was revenge. And, she became this contracted killer for years, and she stayed out of Gotham because I think she figured out that Bruce Wayne was Batman. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. And it wasn't until near, I wouldn't say the end of Batman's career, let's say the middle, that she shows up and starts throwing a gum in the works and starts up stirring all these feelings again between the both of them, but they're both dedicated to fulfilling their family's orders. She's there to get revenge for her dad, and Bruce wants vengeance for what happened to his parents. But, again, while he walks that tightrope, he still hasn't quite given in to the rage in his heart. It's kind of quelled. But Andrea, she fell in that pit long ago, you know? So there's just no helping her. But she is a character that works very well near the middle of Batman's career and not the beginning, because it's too soon. You have to have something build up to that. As well as, I mean, if Batman met her when he was like 16 or 18 in this universe, it's still too soon. He's just now Batman. The idea of the Phantasm showing up in the Caped Crusader, while a cool idea, it has to be much later on in the career, and we don't even know how many seasons the Amazon show is going to get, because the next season is going to deal with the Joker and maybe the return of Catwoman and some other stuff. But it was an interesting idea, and I hope that you enjoyed my feedback on the Phantasms. But anyway, that's it. That's all. So thank you guys so much for basically giving the topic for this video. It was fun to research this stuff. I know a lot of you guys want more Caped Crusader reviews. I don't know why, but I will have one for you on the weekend. I am making content on my other channel. I'm doing a tier list and some other stuff from Super Chat goals, so I'm going to be a lot more busier. I said I was going to do at least like 1 or 2 videos a week on this channel. I'm still going to try, but I'm not going to make that type of promise. Just doing this one video took a lot longer than I thought. But thank you guys for the awesome comments, and also I really appreciate you guys being civil with one another, and it does my heart good to see that. Because, you know, at the end of the day, even if you disagree with someone, you can still be friends. You don't need to cancel them and cut them out of your life. So I am very proud of you guys. We have an awesome community here, and the way that you guys discuss comic books is kind of how we used to discuss comic books before the whole cancel culture era. Just kind of talk about stuff, agree to disagree. You have strong points, I have strong points. You have strong opinions, I have strong opinions. But at the end of the day, you know, we're still pals, you know? So I really respect that about so many of you, and our community is nothing like the rest of YouTube or Twitter or even comic book forums. So, I mean, I feel like a proud papa. You guys are all awesome. So, thank you. But anyway, you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully this video was fun and you enjoyed it. And again, in the comments section below, do you think that Bruce Timm was actually on to something with the whole anti-heroes thing? Or do you think that he just was trying to follow what was the norm of culture at the time of during the pandemic? Let me know in the comment section below. Anyway, keep it locked here for more news on Batman in TV, video games, movies, and occasionally comics when they don't suck. Later, Gothamites.